All right. So I just wanted to recap what we've learned from the fertility support group. So um, we meet the last Tuesday of every month. We It's complimentary. It's confidential. If you know anybody who's looking for help in the field of fertility or is looking for some guidance as far as referrals and what to do, this is the place to be. It's, again, confidential, complimentary. So if you have any friends that are going through fertility or looking for some answers or looking for support, honestly, what it is really a way for people to understand that they're not going through it on their own. They're not by themselves. As we know, that fertility can be very isolating. But this is an opportunity to kind of meet and see other people who have been successful. So what I've done is I've pulled from my own sort of pool of patients that were successful, and they can see in real time, like, if they can get pregnant, you can get pregnant. So the purpose of this was really to see, like, as a practitioner, you end up talking and talking at the patient, right? You give advice like, oh, do some yoga, meditate, eat right, and part of it is like, you don't know if the patient is internalizing it. So I put this group together in order to get out of talking at patients and put them in front of other people who have been successful, so they can see and visualize it in real time. So if anybody's familiar with the old sort of wives' tale, like, oh, she adopted a baby and got pregnant, or she went on vacation and a period came, right? Like, these are the things that we're trying to sort of, like I've always said, like, over 20 years, like, if I could just bottle that, like, what is it about it? And part of it is just, offering options and, listening and learning. And, like, over the course of 20 years, I haven't been practicing the same way when I first came out of school. And this is like a major milestone, to be able to pull from a pool of patients that were successful and put them in front of people that are actually going through it, so they can see and hear from another source besides me. Because, I could tell people, oh, you're going to get pregnant until, I'm blue in the face. And I really do believe that, right? Like, that's my mantra for patients. Like, you just stick with it. You'll get pregnant no matter what. This is what I've seen. If we can let go of the timelines of when, that's like a big, like, anchor, right? Like, when am I? There's just so much pressure. And, give people an example and some options and visual examples, then maybe we can sort of harness that power of, oh, she got adopted, she adopted a baby and got pregnant. But to fast forward and update and modernize, I can give you an example. One of our patients in the group who was had a baby through surrogacy, right? And then ended up getting pregnant on her own. But it wasn't easy as that, one, two, three. There was a lot in there. And she was able to share, right? Here's something else we learned, right? Just because you were successful and you had a baby doesn't mean that you didn't, everything's over with, right? There's a lot of emotion and sort of like, psychology to process there. So, well, now that you have the baby, it's all over with. Well, what was it like going through it? What were, how stigmatizing was it? So, we had some major points. So the bottling, right, of the analogy of getting, adopting a baby and getting pregnant is the release of oxytocin, right? How do we do that? Oh, she adopted a dog, right? When you stare at a dog's eyes, human beings produce 300% more oxytocin. And oxytocin is the bonding chemical, the nesting chemical, right? It's that releases, that helps regulate how the brain communicates with the reproductive organs, right? So that's a big one. And I hope to be able to provide it through that group and have people, experience that firsthand and see these patients who adopted it or had a baby through surrogacy or stuck with it long enough and were successful. Because, like I said, this process is isolating and it's challenging. When people go through the process and they don't get the success they need, some patients were saying that, that wasn't your baby, right? The next time around. Talking about judgment from friends and family, like, are you pregnant yet? That's a big one that people carry around. That's not easy. So to be able to kind of see that they're not alone, they're not the only people that have gone through that, then maybe that's something that helps click. How traumatizing miscarriages are, right? Like, you got to the point, you got to the finish line, you had a successful IVF, but then you had a miscarriage. Like, how hard is that? And It's always good to me. I mean, it is traumatizing and it's terrible. It needs to be addressed, but it's always good to kind of make lemonade out of lemons. Like the fact that you can actually, get to the point where you conceive is a good sign. As terrible it was to suffer the miscarriage, but the fact of the matter is, some women aren't even there yet. Some even aren't even producing their own eggs, and it's everybody's going through it differently, but different stages. Hearing what's wrong with me, right? You're too old, you're running out of time, your eggs are bad, things like that. Like how is it? How does it impact you in a way? Did somebody else experience that? You're not the only one going through it. One of the things, it doesn't matter how you get pregnant, right? It doesn't matter if you IVF, natural, donor egg, surrogacy. It doesn't matter, right? We're here to help. We're here to provide options. Most people came out of the group feeling hopeful, which was great. That was our goal. And they don't really tell you what's wrong with you. They just say, oh, your eggs are bad. They don't tell you how to fix it. You're just telling you what's wrong. They don't give you options, which isn't anything. I don't like to really do that. I try to do more corrective or get to the root of the problem. One of the patients mentioned, it was traumatizing for her. She had some embryos that were, fertilized but bad quality. So the doctor's like, well, we have to get rid of these now. And the impact that it had on her, that was something that she mentioned that, had a major impact. And then we learned that there are tests for endometrial receptivity, right? That's going back to the epigenomic effect of acupuncture, where we know that through the genome, we can turn the good genes on, the bad genes off, and turning the good genes on for endometrial receptivity, there's a test for that. So, one of the things is, like, we treat patients and we don't know what's going on, but then all of a sudden they'll go for a test. They'll see that the uterine lining is better, right? Through evidence, right? It's working. It wasn't before, but now it is. The period's regular every 28 days, right? Their hormones are balanced from time to time. They'll stimulate and produce maybe no eggs or one, halfway decent egg. And then over time, we see that you end up producing more eggs of better quality. And the only thing missing is the intimacy, right? And that's something that we talk about, because intimacy is important. Whether I tell my patients, right, like, go for it, try to get pregnant on your own, use the IVF for backup. Right, use that as your backup plan, because there are certain mechanical and chemical cues from intimacy that kind of, tell the organs to be ready for pregnancy, and that really matters for IVF. So, like, if you're going for an IVF, don't just wait for it to happen in the lab. Like, really kind of build that sort of like intimate chemical capital, so that you have a successful transfer. And that was really about it. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we're doing some, herbal posts. Weekly we'll be posting herbs. We'll be talking about them as a guideline. I'll talk about their effects, like on certain things, like digestion or anxiety or pain. And what we'll see is that herbs have multiple effects. Like, so we'll go and we'll talk about getting a pharmaceutical that is an anti-inflammatory, right? Over-the-counter anti-inflammatories. Well, all they do are anti-inflammatory, right? What about herbs that have analgesic effects that shut the pain signal down? What about their anti-inflammatory properties? Yes, it came from a plant, right? And then their blood-moving effects, as opposed to thinning, right? Like an aspirin, which is a blood thinner. We can do all that stuff with multiple plants and a single plant. So why take the hard? It's the same thing with supplements. Like, why take quercetin when you can, get the benefit of multiple? We know onions are loaded with quercetin and berries and stuff like that, but they have other properties too that are helpful. It's not just about. So getting on to like this whole concept of like one plant with multiple properties combined with plants with multiple properties and their synergy in the ability to help. So if you follow along, you'll see that we'll be posting herbs, and then eventually we'll get to what's called a formula, and then we'll talk about the formula. So tune in, follow along. Thanks for listening, and check us out. And also remind your friends that we have this fertility support group that meets the last Tuesday of every month. It's complimentary and confidential, and from what I hear from the patients, does sort of like give us a sense of hope. Thank you.